Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about one of the, if not the biggest coincidence in all of history, especially presidential history, but history. Um, Forget JFK and Abraham Lincoln, okay? Just forget about that. Yeah, it's kind of cool, but this beats it. And you can probably tell by the title and the thumbnail, but I'm talking about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. These guys, I swear to God, they were just way too similar, but also quite different. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to start with John Adams, then I'm going to talk about Thomas Jefferson, and then I'm going to say what the actual biggest coincidence was. I mean, this is a really well-known story, so you probably know by this point, but hey, let me just keep the suspense going. So let's start with John Adams. He was a lawyer, a prominent politician, was the guy who defended the British soldiers at the Boston Massacre. He signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Even said on the 2nd of July, today will be the day we will remember as Independence Day, or something like that. Actually ended up being July 4th, but well, even John Adams tried to convince people to vote for independence. Other states, other colonies. Later on, during the war, he kind of a diplomat. He didn't do any active fighting. Went to France at some point. Amsterdam, I think he also went to. Then in 85, he went to to Britain and met with King George III. He actually wasn't at the signing of the Constitution, but he was an advocate for it, just didn't sign it. Belonged to the Federalist Party, was elected vice president in 1789. No, 89, under George Washington. Then he himself was president of the US from 1796 to the year 1800. And yeah, like I said, Federalist Party. Then after he was president, he lost prominence. Kind of hated Alexander Hamilton, FYI. And yeah, just married Abigail Adams. John Quincy Adams became president later on. So yeah, that is John Adams. Really, really brief background biography thing. Now, Thomas Jefferson. John Adams before. He was in Boston. Was from Boston. Studied at Harvard. He spent a lot of his presidency in Boston, and people heavily criticized him for it. Now, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, he was ambassador to France and was an advocate of the French Revolution. Spent way too much time in France, talked way too much about France, loved France, a bit too much. And for this, he was heavily criticized for because he was a Francophile. He was the father of the Declaration of Independence, being the guy who wrote the majority of it, with help from people like Ben Franklin. But he was the person who was the most firm. Hey, independence, phew. He was from Virginia, owned slaves, something which John Adams didn't. He was married, but his wife died before he even was president. Was actually vice president under John Adams, but he himself was a Democratic Republican. Then he won the election of 1800, and he was president from 1801 to 1809. Yeah. By the way, I forgot to say, John Adams, his position is VP, was ensured by Alexander Hamilton because he wanted at all costs, he wanted more than anything for George Washington to be president. And then, after George Washington said enough's enough, he actually ensured John Adams was president because he didn't want Thomas Jefferson becoming president. Now, Thomas Jefferson, his vice presidency was ensured by Alexander Hamilton because of what I just said, but then the election of 1800, Alexander Hamilton yet again ensured he would become president by trying to prevent Aaron Burr from doing so. But yeah, that's not what I'm referring to as the biggest coincidence. Yes, they were both criticized for not being in the colonies as much as they should have been. Yes, they were both kind of, vice president and then president consecutively. Yes, their ascension to political power in terms of vice president and president was kind of due to Alexander Hamilton. And yes, they were both involved in the Declaration of Independence, but this is not what I'm referring to as the biggest coincidence. Well, after both men entered the presidencies, they kind of didn't talk for a while. I won't say hated each other, but they weren't on the best terms. But then a few years later, I think it was Abigail Adams, although I may be wrong, kind of encouraged John Adams to start writing to Thomas Jefferson, and they started corresponding. And they kept on writing letters back and forth throughout the rest of their lives. And there's actually a book which I really want, and I forgot the name of the author, but it's a collection of all the letters sent by the Adams family and Thomas Jefferson. So, now the coincidence. If I say July 4th, 1826, does that mean anything to you? Well, it really should. First of all, off the bat, it is exactly 50 years from the actual signing of the Declaration. So it was the 50th anniversary. All good so far. But 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, so July 4th, 1826, was the day John Adams died. Was also the day Thomas Jefferson died. Anyway, that's not the creepy part. The creepy part was that Thomas Jefferson, he was really sick. John Adams was kind of ill. Abigail had died. I don't know the date when Abigail died, but not too long before. And well, John Adams, he knew Thomas Jefferson was alive, and he was not at his prime, obviously, but there. And he was on his deathbed, and his last words were, "Thomas Jefferson survives," or "Thomas Jefferson lives," and then poof, he dropped dead. Here's the cool part though. Thomas Jefferson actually died 3 hours before. So when John Adams said Thomas Jefferson lives, not really, because Thomas Jefferson was already dead at that point. I do not know what Thomas Jefferson's last words were, but it wasn't John Adams survives. It definitely weren't. It definitely wasn't those. But just think of how crazy this is. Two fathers of the American Republic, two people involved in the actual signing of the Declaration of Independence, even though I don't think any of them were there at the Constitutional Convention. Not really important. I mean, obviously important, but not really important to this story. Two people heavily involved in the Declaration of Independence, one of them being the father of the Declaration of Independence, and the other one being one of the people who you can actually credit for actually getting people to want independence because I think there were 13 colonies, they needed 9 out of 13 to actually pass the vote. And John Adams, he was really hell bent on getting 13 out of 13, which he did. But John Adams managing to convince the delegates from all colonies to go for independence. And Thomas Jefferson actually drafting the document these delegates signed makes up the most prominent figures, apart from Ben Franklin and Samuel Adams and a bunch of other people, in the Declaration of Independence signing thing. And then 50 years later, to the day, they both died on the same day. And one of them's last words were, Thomas Jefferson lives, despite the fact that the other guy had died a mere hours before. How is this not crazy? Literally forget all about JFK and Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, it's crazy, but this just beats everything. So yeah, that is it. I mean, there's really not much else to say, and I've managed to make, I think the clock is 11 minutes, and it's gonna be more of me just talking about this one event. But honestly, it's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, that is it. I don't know if you noticed, but yes, this is still in my series based on the Loki series. So if you know why I'm doing this video, feel free to comment. But there is a reason. So if you know it, please let me know. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So I'm gonna end it there. There's really not much else to say. If you please Google it, because you don't take my word for it. Just to Google it, it's honestly bonkers. But yeah. So yeah, I hope you found it interesting. I definitely hope you liked it. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.